Seam heads, start cracking those peanuts and spitting those seeds, because gloves are soon to be popping.
He makes a headlong dive and makes the catch.
And bats are going to get cracking.
Blast one! Deep right field! Gone!
Welcome to KNBR's Giants Warm-Up.
Way back there. Goodbye!
On the Sports Leader.
We are back. What's going on, folks? Kerry, Crowley hanging out with you Saturday afternoon, getting you set for Giants baseball on the radio. They are halfway home this season, 33-48, 51. We are halfway home this season. The San Francisco Giants, 33-48, 81 games down, 81 games to go for this ball club. Apologies, a little technical glitch on my end, but we are all sorted out here and ready to go. And there's been some technical glitches really since the outset of this season for the San Francisco Giants. They are hoping that the second half of the year looks quite different than the first half for this ball club. At 33-48, they will turn the game over tonight to Logan Webb, who really has been one of the few bright spots on the San Francisco Giants. Ever since returning from the injured list, Webb has regained the Cy Young caliber all-star form that he showed for much of the past 5 seasons. He enters tonight's ball game with a 4-5 record, a 3.35 earned run average, 70 strikeouts, a whip of 1.12 on the season, and he's opposed by Bryce Elder. Elder 5-5 on the year, a 3.71 earned run average for the Atlanta Braves, 79 strikeouts, a whip of 1.21. The Braves, meanwhile, 49-31 this year. First place in the National League East, and it really is amazing to look into that Atlanta dugout and see so many former Giants thriving with that ball club, and not necessarily putting up the best numbers of their respective careers, but thriving in a sense of this team has outperformed expectations. This team is doing everything well, and this team looks like a legitimate threat at the top of the National League right now, along with the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Milwaukee Brewers, the best team in the NL Central. Mike Yastrzemski out in right field. Mauricio Dubon was playing left field last night for Milwaukee. Joey Bart, the backup catcher for this squad, he just arrived this week. Dom Smith has played an important role off the bench, especially in late and close and clutch situations where Giants fans got to know Smith last season. Antoine Richardson is the first base coach over for the Atlanta Braves. Michael Schwartzy, former Giants front office member, he's a member of this Atlanta Braves front office now. And the Giants, meanwhile, 33 is together on this squad. Obviously, it's been a tumultuous month for the San Francisco Giants as an organization. And a lot of people have called in, a lot of people have dialed in asking, when is the last time the Giants were this bad? When is the last time that you as a fan felt as hopeless as some of you do on a day-to-day basis watching this ball club? And for me, I go back to the first season that I started doing this show alongside Marty Lurie, and I started covering the San Francisco Giants, and that is the 2017 season. And I think there were a ton of parallels between 2017 and 2026, and I think it's very important that the San Francisco Giants as an organization learn from their mistakes and missteps from 2017 that led to terrible seasons in 18 and 19 to prevent following the same pattern in 26, 27, and 28 moving forward for this franchise. I think what stands out to me about the 2017 season and why I compare it so closely to what's happened this year for the Giants is that after 2016 and the devastating finish for the Giants being beaten in the National League Division Series by the Chicago Cubs, the bullpen collapse, the frustrating, anxious moments throughout the second half of that 2016 season, the Giants thought that they were one player away. They thought that they were one quick fix away from being back at or near the top of the National League. And so Bobby Evans, the general manager at the time, went out and he signed the pitcher who was supposed to fix everything for the San Francisco Giants. Mark Melancon signs the 4-year, $64 million deal that a decade later is still the richest contract the San Francisco Giants have ever given to a relief pitcher. And on the very first day of that 2017 season, Melancon came in the ninth inning at Chase Field in Arizona, and he gave up the lead. the player who was supposed to fix everything. The one flaw that the Giants had in 2016 that was their Achilles heel, that in their eyes was the reason that they lost that NLDS to the eventual World Series champion Chicago Cubs and they couldn't keep up their even-year magic. He came in and immediately was met with hurdles, was met with obstacles that he could not overcome in his brief tenure as a San Francisco Giant that lasted fewer than 3 seasons. So, what happens the rest of 2017? Well, the Giants' best players, Buster Posey, Brandon Crawford, Brandon Belt, they all have fine seasons, but nothing meshed. None of them got hot together. The offense was a liability, and several players started to show signs of decline. This core that the Giants had locked in, the extensions that Belt and Posey and Crawford had signed suddenly looked like they were weighing down the franchise. Madison Bumgarner crashes his dirt bike in Colorado during a series against the Rockies. He undergoes shoulder surgery, quite simply never the same pitcher after that. His off-the-field misstep was a huge issue for the San Francisco Giants on the field because they did not have the horses in the rotation to replace Madison Bumgarner. You look at the rest of that pitching staff from 2017. It was Jeff Samardzija who had an ERA of 4.42. It was Ty Block who had an ERA of 4.78. It was Johnny Cueto who started to regress in the early stages of that 6-year, $130 million contract with a 4.52 ERA. Matt Cain was at the end of his run, his final year with the Giants before retiring at the age of 32. He posted a 5.43 ERA. And worst of all was Matt Moore, the big trade deadline acquisition in 2016. Moore ties for the National League lead with Jeff Samardzija with 15 losses and gives up a Major League worst 107 earned runs. He posted a 5.52 earned run average, and the Giants had to run him out there every 5th day. And that is what you're seeing in 2026. Players who are paid highly to perform well have failed to do so for the San Francisco Giants. Players who the Giants invested in believed that the core could take them to the brink of a postseason into the playoffs. Those players are not performing up to expectations. Rafael Devers, Willie Adames, Matt Chapman. You look at the starting rotation behind Logan Webb, and it's been shaky. I know Robbie Ray pitched extremely well earlier this week in Oracle Park against the A's, but he's been hit and miss at times this season. The core that the Giants invested in 2026, much more from 2016 into 2017, a decade ago, just isn't up to par. It has let the Giants down, and that is the primary reason that halfway through this tumultuous 2026 season, the Giants are 15 games under 500, and quite simply, one of the most disappointing stories in Major League Baseball. So why do I bring up the parallel with 2017? First off, it's because a lot of people have been asking, when was the last time things were this bad? When was the last time you felt this hopeless? And it was just a decade ago. And in the decade since then, the Giants have only made the playoffs once, in my opinion, because they failed to recover from that 2017 season adequately. They failed to recognize the flaws in their ways, and they failed to put together a plan that would set up the franchise for the future. They leaned in on that core, and it set them back in 2018. It set them back in 2019. You think about the 98-loss season, that was a begging moment to rebuild, to tear down, to trade some of those players, some of those contracts that you could get out from under, and to start fresh with a young, exciting core and investing in a farm system that was not producing at the same level by that point. And the Giants didn't do that. Instead, in the offseason after 2017, they traded for Evan Longoria. They traded infamously, for Andrew McCutchen in the deal that sent Brian Reynolds to the Pittsburgh Pirates, who ultimately became the highest paid player in Pirates history. The outfielder, the all-star the Giants couldn't produce for more than 3 decades. He ends up in Pittsburgh's farm system and debuts a few years later against the San Francisco Giants at PNC Park. I was there that afternoon. The excitement for the Pirates that day when Brian Reynolds got the call-up. The Giants cannot let this happen again. The August 3rd trade deadline is around the corner, about 5 weeks away. Buster Posey has to recognize that this core is only getting older. And while earlier this week he said that he believes in the potential of this group. He still believes in the power of this core. He also said the Giants must be open to anything, something that they were not open to at the 2017 trade deadline, something that they were not open to after that 2017 season. The Giants must use this losing season, this disastrous season, as an opportunity to rethink the future, to rebuild this roster, to restructure this organization, and to reimagine what's possible for this franchise. Because what has transpired thus far, both on and off the field, has been unacceptable for the San Francisco Giants, the standards that they hold themselves to inside the walls at 24 Willie Mays Plaza. And I know this because there was hope entering this season. The Giants would be a contender for at least a wild card spot in the National League, that they had the potential to win 86, 87, 88 games and to finally get back to the postseason. And halfway home, 81 games in, they couldn't be further from it. They're one of the worst teams in baseball, and they can't get out of their own way. And so many of these missteps remind me of the missteps of 2017. They remind me of the core that was never quite in sync. The team that blew up after Madison Bumgarner's dirt bike injury. The team that thought that it had the right piece in Mark Melancon. This Giants team thought that it had the right piece in Rafael Devers. I don't know that we can say with any certainty that that is the case. It is an invitation to revisit history, to look back at 2017, the errors of the Giants' ways, and to say, we are not going to let that happen again. We will see what Buster Posey and the San Francisco Giants do from here. But I know what happened after 2017. It got ugly before it got better. And the only time it got better, 2021, was brief. That is the only time the Giants have visited the playoffs since that 2016 season last decade. And that, folks, is unacceptable as the standard of this organization. I'm Kerry Crowley. The show is Giants Warm-Up. We are rolling with you until the pregame show begins at 5:05. First pitch at 6:05 from Oracle Park this evening. Kyle Harr behind the board. Raph is off for the day. We are just getting started right here on the Sports Leader.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
It's almost time for hot dogs, peanuts, cold beers, and orange and black baseball. Our Giants warm-up rolls on the sports leader.
Here's a swing and a comebacker. Iglesias has it, and he tells Arise, don't even bother. He runs over to first, flips it there for the out, and the game is over just like that. Iglesias retires the Giants very quietly in the ninth inning.
That was the end of the Giants' latest loss, a 3-1 defeat on Friday evening out at Oracle Park. They finished the first half 33-48. 15 games under 500. No one expected this. I know there were skeptics among people who thought that this Giants team could contend for a wildcard berth, be any better than 500, the mark that they've been for about 4 seasons now, but I don't think anyone anticipated the Giants looking this bad this early this season. Now that you're halfway home, can't say it's early anymore. Giants 15 games under 500, just trying to salvage as much as they can, avoid some of the dubious records as they are on pace for a 96-loss season. I was making the comparisons in our opening segment to the 98-loss campaign in 2017. Obviously, the worst season in franchise history, dating back even to 1883, the New York Gotham's era of Giants baseball. 1985, when the Giants lost 100 games. 40 years after that, they were in the World Series against the then Oakland A's, of course, in the Bay Bridge Series. And then 2017, the Giants lost 98. 4 years after that, they won 107. Things can turn around, but my goodness, is it going to be an arduous task for Buster Posey and this organization. They have not made things any easier on themselves with the long-term contracts that they have handed out to players who are not performing up to expectations. So, with that out of the way, we're rolling with you until first pitch this evening. Pre-game show begins at 5:05 p.m. Pacific time. Logan Webb will throw the first pitch for the Giants at 6:05 out at Oracle Park. Webb taking the mound today. He's 4-5 on the season, a 3.35 earned run average, and on my honest assessment, I think he's 2 more quality starts away from potentially being named an all-star for the 3rd time in his career. I know that he missed time on the injured list. I know that the innings aren't where they usually are at this point in the season, but I really do believe that Logan Webb is in contention for an all-star spot yet again this year. Obviously, it helps that he's got the reputation and all-star pedigree, but he has been so good since returning from the IL. He has regained that form and has put himself in the conversation, even though Buster Posey said he is not going to trade Logan Webb. Every team that's doing due diligence should be calling about Logan Webb because he would be one of the most valuable trade assets if made available on the market this summer. And who knows, maybe some team comes in and shocks Buster Posey ahead of the August 3rd deadline. Webb, of course, under contract for the 2027 season at $23 million on the 5-year, $90 million extension he signed a couple of seasons ago with the San Francisco Giants, and $24 million in 2028. So any acquiring team in a hypothetical trade would get 2+ seasons out of Webb in the midst of a prime that is looking really, really good. He's opposed today by Bryce Elder of the Atlanta Braves. Elder 5-5 on the season, a 3.71 earned run average. The Braves 49-31. They play their 81st game this evening at Oracle Park, managed by Walt Weiss. They are in first place in the National League East. A great story this season, despite several players who underperformed this year. We'll go through their lineup right now. Michael Harris II, he leads things off and plays center field. Such a fun player to watch in the outfield. Dynamic speed out there. 14 homers. He's got a lot of pop. 42 runs driven in, 4 stolen bases, a 304 batting average, one of the best marks in the National League, and an 842 OPS. The switch hitting Ozzie Albies bats second for Atlanta. He'll hit from the left side, of course, against Logan Webb and play second base. Albies with 12 homers, 44 driven in, a stolen base, 281 average and a 776 OPS. He's turned into a very solid player. Matt Olson, former Oakland A, over at first base today. He'll hit third for the Braves. Olson with 20 homers this season, 52 driven in, 2 stolen bases, a 273 average, and an 875 OPS. How about that decision by the Atlanta Braves to let Freddie Freeman walk in free agency to acquire Matt Olson and to essentially get Freeman's level of production at first base? They've done a really good job managing that position for about the last 15 years or so. After Olson in the order, it's Drake Baldwin, the dynamic young catcher for Atlanta. He has a ton of pop from the left side, one of my favorite catchers to watch in Major League Baseball. 39 runs driven in, a stolen base, 265 average, and an 828 OPS for Baldwin, who has missed some time on the IL this season. He's followed in the order by a former Giant, Dominic Smith, the DH today for Atlanta. He'll hit from the left side, of course. 6 homers, 32 runs batted in for Smith, sporting a 280 batting average, similar to the mark that he posted in San Francisco last season after joining the club in June. A 744 OPS. Mauricio Dubon, another ex-Giant, follows him in the lineup. Dubon out in left field for the second straight day. He had 2 runs scored and 2 hits in last night's ball game, a key component of why he and the, quote, Kapler rejects that he called his former Giants teammates turned Atlanta Braves were able to win that ball game. Dubon has 8 home runs, 43 driven in, 2 stolen bases, a 276 average, and a 735 OPS. Down in the 7th slot in the order for Atlanta, it is the struggling third baseman, Austin Riley, who has 8 homers this season, 36 runs driven in, 4 stolen bases, a 215 average, and just a 641 OPS for Riley, who's mirrored the worst slump of his life amid the worst season of his professional career. Mike Yastrzemski will hit 8th forever Giant out there in right field for the Atlanta Braves. He signed a 2-year, $23 million contract with Atlanta, a great deal for him. He's struggled a lot this season to produce and live up to that contract, but still providing valuable defense out in the outfield for the Braves. 4 homers, 19 driven in for Yastrzemski, 1 stolen base, a 223 average, and a 648 OPS for Yastrzemski. Ha-Seong Kim follows him. He is the shortstop today for the Braves. He spent a lot of this season on the injured list, and when he has played, it has been not very good for Atlanta. No home runs, 3 runs driven in, a stolen base, an 0.72 batting average, and a 230 OPS. Made a nice play in the first inning of last night's ball game after Luis Arraez got on board with a double. Bryce Eldridge hit the ball to the left side of the field for the Giants, and Ha-Seong Kim gloved the ball at shortstop, threw over to Riley at third base, and was able to get Arraez trying to sneak over to third. It was a bad base running decision to go on a ball hit in front of him to the left side of the infield, but nevertheless, Ha-Seong Kim made the necessary defensive play to kind of thwart an early Giants rally against Reynaldo Lopez. They did end up scoring in the first inning, but that was the only run the Giants were able to scratch across in an otherwise incredibly disappointing and frustrating performance against Atlanta and its pitching staff. Here's how Tony Vitello will set things up for the Giants as they unofficially open their second half of their season. Luis Arraez will lead things off and hit at the top of the order, of course, playing second base. 3 homers, 30 driven in for Arraez, 6 stolen bases, a 321 batting average, and an 807 OPS. He did make an error in last night's ball game, a throwing error, but the defense, for the most part, has been really good for the second baseman out of Venezuela, who, of course, one of several Giants players who are thinking about their loved ones back home after the tragedy that occurred this week with the doublet earthquakes that took place down in that country. Casey Schmidt will hit second for the Giants. He's out in left field today. 16 homers for Schmidt, who's having a career year. 42 runs driven in, 7 stolen bases, a 290 average, and an 829 OPS. I know there are a lot of folks in the Giants organization who would like to see Schmidt become an all-star. The second-round pick in 2020 out of San Diego State has really come into his own as a valuable utility player this year. Jung-Hoo Lee will hit third against Bryce Elder. Lee, again, having a career year for the San Francisco Giants. 5 homers, 30 runs driven in, 5 stolen bases, a 327 average for Jung-Hoo Lee at an 831 OPS. It's going to be really interesting if the Giants get some calls on Lee at this year's trade deadline, because he's got the opt-out that triggers in his contract after next season, but he really is signed to a 6-year, $113 million deal with the San Francisco Giants. He's in the 3rd season of that, so fascinating dynamics at play if Buster Posey gets some calls on Lee at this year's trade deadline. Rafael Devers will hit cleanup today. He is over at first base. Again, I've been a vocal proponent of having Devers be the DH and Eldridge play first base, but that is not how the Giants have lined things things up for the most part since Eldridge was promoted. 12 homers for Devers, 39 driven in, a 236 average, and a 730 OPS. Those numbers just not going to cut it for Devers. Willy Adames, he's also struggling for the Giants. The $182 million man at shortstop, 14 homers, 32 runs driven in, a stolen base, a 229 average. That's not good. And a 708 OPS for Adames, whose on-base percentage is well below 300 at this juncture of the season. Bryce Eldridge will hit 6th for the Giants. Would like to see him higher up in the order against a right-handed pitcher. 6 homers, 16 runs driven in for Eldridge, who's cooled off over the last week or so. A 277 average and an 857 OPS. That will play for the 21-year-old rookie. Matt Chapman down in the 7th spot in the order for the Giants. Again, he's cooled off as well over the course of the last week and a half. The third baseman has 7 homers, 42 runs driven in, a 239 average, and a 704 OPS. Drew Gilbert follows him. He plays center field. He has got 3 home runs, 15 runs driven in, 231 average, and a 683 OPS. And then it's the Giants' new catcher, Drew Cavanaugh, getting a start for the second consecutive evening. Drew Cavanaugh, of course, 17th round draft pick just a couple of years ago, has flown through the Giants system. They're really excited about what they've seen, especially at the plate. He got his first major league hit last night. Also worked a couple counts. Did strike out in his first at bat on a curveball down below the strike zone from Lopez. But overall, the Giants liked what they saw from Cavanaugh, and they're very excited about the potential of their 24-year-old catcher. When we come back, we've got scores from around Major League Baseball. We've also got some conversations this afternoon with Roger Munter, who writes the great There Are Giants Substack, Connor Grossman, who writes Giants Postcard. Good conversation afternoon here on KMBR as we get you set for Giants baseball on KMBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
Now back to the show built for the orange and black family. This is Giants Warm Up on KNBR, the sports leader.
We are back here on Giants Warm Up. Kerry Crowley rolling with you on Saturday afternoon. It's a beautiful day in San Francisco. A little windy, but hey, if you're headed to the ballpark this evening, it should be a fun one out there. Despite the Giants' record, 33-48, 16-22 at Oracle Park, that's not going to cut it. It's been terrible through the first half of this season. They're hoping that they can start to turn things around here in Game 82. Let's take a quick look at the out-of-town scoreboard. We've got some great guests for you this afternoon. Roger Munter, who writes the great There Are Giants Substack, he'll be joining me here in about 10 minutes. And then Connor Grossman, you hear him just about every Saturday on with me on Giants Warm Up. He does the Giants Postcards Substack and the Giants Postcards podcast with me. We'll play a snippet from that. Top of the fifth inning right now in Queens, where the Mets trailed 2-0 to the Philadelphia Phillies. The Mets, of course, fired their manager, Carlos Mendoza. I was privately hoping that Kai Correa, the bench coach, would be promoted to the manager job there. I thought it would have been a fun discussion for those of us in San Francisco who know Kai. Instead, they go with Andy Green, an uninspiring choice, former manager of the San Diego Padres. We will see how that unfolds in New York. Bottom of the ninth inning right now in Chicago. The White Sox trying to walk things off. Bases loaded. Nobody out against the Kansas City Royals. Schreiber on the mound for Kansas City. We may be able to provide an update for you on that ball game in a moment. Bottom of the sixth inning at PNC Park in Pittsburgh, where the Reds hold a 6-4 lead over the Pirates at the moment. Chase Burns, the young pitcher, 5 2/3 innings right now, 9 strikeouts, but he has allowed 4 earned runs to these Pittsburgh Pirates. Bottom of the second inning, the Rays and the D-backs, the Trop in Tampa, 1-1 ball game there. Cabrera on the mound for the Diamondbacks. Cedric Mullins at the plate for the Rays. A couple finals to tell you about from this afternoon. The Boston Red Sox were able to pick up a rare win. They beat the New York Yankees 4-1. Garrett Cole takes the loss in that ball game. He falls to 2-3 with a 4.06 earned run average in his first season back from Tommy John surgery. And Aroldis Chapman save number 16 for Boston. He will in all likelihood be on the move at this year's deadline. Houston Astros take down the Detroit Tigers 8-6 today. A.J. Hinch still sitting at 999 career victories for the Detroit Tigers. Of course, most of those picked up with the Houston Astros. Isaac Paredes had a big 2-run double in that ball game. Josh Hader saved number 7 since coming off the IL for Houston. And speaking of ball clubs from Texas, the Rangers defeated the Toronto Blue Jays today up in Canada 7-4. Gray with the win. Cease takes the loss, and Alexander gets to save. Dylan Cease, 7-year, $210 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. 4-4 in his first year, a 3.02 earned run average. That ERA has come down of late, but they lose today's ball game 7-4, as we mentioned. The Blue Jays, how about this? A year after appearing in the World Series, taking the Dodgers to 7 games and coming inches away from winning that title. They are 5 games under 500 at 39-44 at the moment. Other ball games to tell you about this afternoon, the Nationals and the Orioles, the Battle of the DMV at Camden Yards today. Griffin against Young in that ball game. The Mariners and the Guardians out at Progressive Park. You've got Logan Gilbert going for Seattle and former D-backs prospect Slade Ciccone going for Cleveland in that ballgame. Ciccone traded last year at the deadline in the deal, I believe, involving Josh Naylor that sent him out west. Cubs and the Brewers in the Midwest this evening. Kyle Harrison gets the ball, looking to solidify himself as an all-star today. Harrison 8-1, a 2.50 earned run average for the 50-win Milwaukee Brewers. They are 50-29 with 2 games to go before they reach their midpoint. David Peterson will make his first start for the Chicago Cubs. Peterson acquired earlier this week in a trade with the New York Mets, who are looking to offload talent after their disastrous season. The Cubs at 44-38. They need more help in the rotation. I think they're going to give Peterson a good look over the course of the next month. But I'll tell you what, if things don't work out for a pitcher with a 3.6 record and a 6.09 earned run average, I think you just trade for Robbie Ray if you're the Chicago Cubs and fit a better veteran left-hander into that spot in the rotation. They need left-handed pitching. I don't know that Peterson is going to be the solution. They gave up a good prospect, a former second-round draft pick, to get Peterson from the New York Mets in that deal. Minnesota Twins play host to the Colorado Rockies today. The Rockies 32-50 on the season, sending Michael Lorenzen, the Team Italy hero from the World Baseball Classic, to the mound. He's 2-9 with a 7.11 earned run average. Minnesota 39-44 on the season. Kind of an uninspiring matchup out there. The Cardinals play host to the Miami Marlins. How about the Marlins? After taking down the Giants in 3 consecutive ball games at Marlins Park last weekend, they're 43-39 right now. The Cardinals still 5 games over 500, and Andre Pillante takes the hill. He's borderline all-star this year, 9-4, 3.59 earned run average, not far off from the ERA that Logan Webb is sporting at the moment. Padres and the Dodgers this evening down in San Diego at Petco Park. It's Kyle Hart, the lefty, going for San Diego against Yoshinobu Yamamoto for the Dodgers. 7-5, a 2.65 earned run average for the World Series hero. And then the other game later on this evening, the Sacramento A's down in Los Angeles, the Big A. Anaheim taking on the Angels. The Angels firing Perry Manassian, the general manager and the brother of San Francisco Giants GM Zach Manassian, earlier today. John Mozeliak, former St. Louis Cardinals executive, taking over in interim capacity for that franchise. Reed Detmers gets the ball for the Angels. A lot of trade speculation around him at the moment. When we come back, Roger Muncher will join me breaking down the last week or so in the world of the San Francisco Giants. We will get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And folks, not a whole lot of good, if we're being honest, to touch on for this franchise at the moment. Giants warm-up continues right here on The Sports Leader.
Giants fans. First pitch isn't too far away as KNBR's Giants warm-up continues on the sports leader.
We are back here on Giants Warm-Up. Kerry Crowley rolling with you until the start of tonight's pregame show, 5:05 p.m. Pacific time. First pitch coming your way at 6:05 from Oracle Park. Logan Webb will throw it for the San Francisco Giants. We've got a great lineup of guests this afternoon. Roger Munter, who does the great There Are Giants Substack. He covers the Giants farm system in more detail than anyone out there and has done a tremendous job through the years of preparing you for the players coming up to the major league level. He is going to join me right now. Connor Grossman will join me later on in this afternoon show. Roger, we've made the connection. He and I taped the K-Raj podcast earlier this week. We discussed the state of the San Francisco Giants, what's gone on with this organization this week, a lot of familiar topics that you've heard a lot about here on the airways, but no one breaks it down, in my opinion, with more clarity and conviction than Roger. So, Roger, I will cede the floor to you. Let's talk about these 2026 Giants.
The 2026 Giants season is descending into a series of, to borrow from World Cup analogy, own goals, as this club is finding more and more creative ways to kick the ball in its own net. And K-Raj is here to, I don't even know, Kerry, how's your Shakespeare? Are we come not to praise the Giants, but to bury them?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm ready for a soliloquy from you today, Roger. That's that you'll handle that. I've got the sonnet, and we'll wrap up the show, in poetic fashion.
Kerry, you are a guy who has been in a lot of media scrums. You are also a native San Franciscan. I don't necessarily want to jump straight to the Giant national conversation. We could talk about the baseball. They're both kind of discouraging at this point. But what is your assessment just of kind of where this organization is finding itself right now?
I think that this is, and I've had this discussion with a few people over the last few days, Roger, at least the worst the organization has been in terms of its overall state since the end of the 2017 season, and probably well before that. I think we'd have to go back to like 92, 93 when they were thinking about leaving San Francisco for Tampa to find a situation that rivals the state of the organization and the vibes around this franchise right now. And I say franchise and not team because this isn't just the 26 players on the roster who failed to produce this year. This is the entire organization and its failures extending well beyond the field. And, there's a crisis of leadership, a crisis of accountability, an inability to win ball games. And it has just added up to really mounting frustration, and deservedly so, for fans who expect and deserve so much better from this franchise.
Yeah, I was looking at their record, at some point this month and saying, boy, they're going to trade off some people. This is a team that could make a run at the worst record of all time in the Giants' San Francisco era anyway. That may or may not happen. At this point, it's hard to imagine them avoiding being the most embarrassing team.
Yeah.
Or one of the most embarrassing teams, just because, as you say, on almost every front, they seem overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that's the right word at this moment, is they seem overwhelmed and ill-prepared for every single moment that a baseball season throws at you. And, one of the reasons that we love baseball is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Things take place over the course of 162 that you can't predict, and how teams react to it fascinates us. And, the players that come up over the course of the season and make an impact on the 40-man roster many times, we have no idea who they are during spring training. They surprise us, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. But the Giants aren't even halfway through this 2026 season, Roger, and it feels like there's been crisis after crisis, whether, you go back to the opening road trip of the season when Matt Chapman and Casey Schmidt got into it. And, you could brush that off as, hey, it's a one-time thing. The Giants are feeling the heat of playing for a new manager. I get it. But, you start to add these issues up and compound them with the, off the field controversies that this franchise has brought upon itself. And that's the key part, brought upon itself. And it really just speaks to a franchise that doesn't seem to have a solution for anything that's being thrown its way right now.
It's funny you used the word vibes earlier, and I keep being caught by the idea when I hear Tony Vitello's kind of conversations with the media, how frequently he turns to kind of vibe-based solutions. I mean, he has referenced indirectly that Chapman Schmidt dust up several times recently. He was saying he liked that edge. It does feel like edge and grittiness and character. Both Vitello and Buster Posey seem to put a lot of stock in those elements as opposed to preparation, or organization, data, all the kind of things that make you good on the field. There just seems to be a little bit too much of this sort of vibes-based commentary of we can win by having an edge.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think you trace back how this organization has reached this point, and after Bruce Bochy announced his retirement and Farhan Zaidi was in charge of the organization, he brings in Gabe Kapler. The Giants swung so heavily in the direction of embracing analytics and ways of building a roster and an organization that I think were foreign to fans and uncomfortable for many fans. I think, you and I personally, we enjoyed the discussions about pitch shape and different things that the Giants were trying out in the farm system and different ways they were thinking about player development. And it may not have been for everyone, but you could tell while the Giants weren't necessarily, pandering to their fans with the approach that they took under Farhan Zaidi and Gabe Kapler, and it wasn't necessarily successful beyond 2021. They had a clear vision for what they wanted to become, and it was a data-driven organization that would give opportunities to players on the margins of the roster who didn't necessarily fit elsewhere. They would sign certain prototypes, they would dominate the strike zone, and, they were trying to build something in a direction that aligned with some sort of philosophy that was rooted in data. And so after it doesn't work, after Farhan Zaidi is dismissed and Gabe Kapler's out of the organization, they've swung back in this other direction where Buster and the team of advisors that he has, who are all largely people who were around the organization from 2010 to 2016, are trying to recreate the vibes of 2010 to 2016. They're trying to say what worked for us, 10, 11 years ago, and that was a band of misfits getting together. And it was, the Marco Scutero hitting 362 and batting average mattered for that team. It was timely hitting, but you just can't recreate that overnight. And I think by, changing philosophy so dramatically, the Giants have ended up hurting themselves and backed themselves into this corner where, quite honestly, Roger, they don't do anything well. They don't pitch well. They don't hit for power well. They don't get on base well. They don't even substitute for one another well when someone needs to come onto the field.
Yeah, I have like 8 things I want to say in response to all that because there is so much there. I absolutely agree with your fundamental point. Right after the change in leadership was announced, I had Enos Harris on my podcast, and he said, this feels like a classic case of oversteering. And they definitely yanked the steering wheel in the opposite direction. And one thing you don't mention there is, whatever else you want to say about Farhan Zaidi, you could always say that he was avoiding putting the organization in a position of bad obligations, of reducing flexibility. And I know that frustrated people because he lacked boldness or decisiveness. He didn't take the big swings. But, the Giants are about to get a real lesson in what not having financial flexibility means.
Yeah.
And that bill is coming due. It's here.
It's due. It's due. That's a great way to put it. We're both realizing that in real time.
But, one thing that I have been thinking about over and over and over lately, back to this issue of they don't do anything well. Totally agree with. It's a bad brand of baseball. They don't defend the run. They don't throw strikes, which is something they say they want to do. And they keep running the same people out there every day, no matter what the brand of baseball is. But, on a larger scale, you remember Gabe Kapler, what was it, 2022, said they would have been in the playoffs, but if it weren't for what he called the world's shittiest defense.
Yeah.
They have now gone through 2 other managers, a changeover in the front office, and almost completely revamped the 26-man roster. And that has never gotten better. They play bad baseball consistently, no matter who is in charge and who's on the field. And I don't get where that's coming from. Why can they not at least clean up their play?
It's utterly confounding, and we see it on display year after year against mid-market teams who have clearly defined roster building strategies. And to me, Roger, it was on display in just such a glaring way when the Giants were in Miami last weekend. And you see a Marlins team, what do they do well? Well, they don't hit the ball for power. They don't, none of their pitchers outside of Max Meyer have particularly low earned run averages. But what do? They put pressure on you on the base paths. And the Giants have not been able to contend with a team like that. The end of the run for Gabe Kapler in a San Francisco Giants uniform in that September of 2023 season was really when Giants executives watched this team play the Arizona Diamondbacks at Chase Field, and the Diamondbacks just ran circles around the San Francisco Giants. Their outfielders defended well, they ran the bases extraordinarily well, and the Giants said, well, why can't we do that? And 3 years later, they are nowhere closer to doing that than they were when Gabe Kapler was fired as manager of the San Francisco Giants.
No, I mean, the annual end-of-year presser is always, we got to get more athletic, we got to get faster, we've got to press the issue. And they not only don't get the personnel to do it, even the personnel they have who could do it, they don't utilize. I mean, Casey Schmidt is a good runner.
Yeah.
For his size. Casey Schmidt shouldn't be leading your team in steals.
No.
Luis Ariz should not be among your team leader in steals. They have some personnel to do something a little more aggressively, and they just talk about it and don't put that talk into action.
And what's so bizarre to me is they even created a roster spot this season on their 26-man roster for someone who should run the bases. On opening day, it was Jared Oliva is going to be the designated base runner for this team. And about 3 days before Jared Oliva is set to come back from his long injured list stint, they promote Jonah Cox to the big league roster. And you're thinking, okay, well, Cox can play the role that Jared Oliva was supposed to play, and they haven't used him. They haven't used him in a way that would take advantage of his speed, his skill set, and in any way justify the fact that you called this kid up from Double-A and you stunted his development in this perplexing way. If you were going to tell me the Giants, Roger, would call a guy up from Double-A, my assumption would be, okay, he's playing 80-90% of the games. Jonah Cox says, I can count the at-bats back to you. I can read them and dictate what he's done in a major league uniform because he's gotten so few opportunities.
Yeah, that is the sort of ironic capper of the whole Rafael Devers situation that ended the Miami series, is that Jonah went in and didn't steal a base, didn't get an opportunity to steal a base. That is one of in a season that's just increasingly weird. One of the weirdest aspects of it is that the Giants bench is sponsored by the Witness Protection Agency. Like, anybody on that bench disappears from human sight. So Victor Barracoto gets sent up to the at bat in a crucial high leverage situation late in was that the first game of the Miami series?
Yeah.
And it's his first at bat in a week and a half. Something like that is not being put in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
And that's how this roster has been managed all along. It's like people are not really being put in a position to succeed.
I was out at the Buster Posey press conference on Tuesday at Oracle Park, which I'm sure we'll get into. But the only thing more surprising than what Buster said or didn't say was when I saw Buddy Kennedy walk onto the field and I thought, he's on the roster. Huh. I haven't seen him appear in a game because I guess the Giants haven't needed a position player to pitch in a while.
I mean, and good for Buddy. I mean, he's 30-something years old.
It's great for him.
Major league paycheck. I'm sure he would love to play, but he's certainly doing well for himself. But guys like Jonah Cox, Victor Barracoto, they need to be playing somewhere. And also, some of these moves, they're junking up the 40-man. I mean, they've got, even with the Oliva DFA, they've got, 7 outfielders on that 40-man, maybe 8. Bo Davidson is going to be a Rule 5 protection decision this fall. Scott Bandura is a Rule 5 protection agency. I mean, the outfield situation on the 40-man roster has been complicated greatly by some of the moves they've made this year.
Yeah, it's so confounding because, you've got Jung-Hoo Lee, who's under contract for 4 more years in San Francisco, 3.5 more years, unless he keeps this up. Unless he keeps this up, then he's opting out and making a ton of money after next season. You've got Elliot Ramos, who's under team control, but they've been in no hurry to rush back to the major league roster. And you've got Casey Schmidt playing the outfield now for this team. I just like the roster pieces have come nowhere close to forming a puzzle this year. Like it's all been a situation. I feel like I'm watching Survivor, where a team gets 3/4 of the way through a puzzle, it falls apart, and then they just have to restart over and over and over again.
Yeah. I will take a slightly positive tone here for a second. And there's an analogy I've made in my writing before, and that is, when AJ Preller got the Padres job, he first traded off like Trey Turner and Max Fried and a whole bunch of future major leaguers, faster than he could get his office internet hooked up. Built a really expensive old last place team, got suspended by the commissioner, and built a roster that was full of left fielders and DHs and didn't have a shortstop on it. That was like his first 2 years on that job.
I actually covered that team in spring training.
He got better. So
Yes.
Job growth is possible, but boy, it feels like we're a long way from it right now with Buster Posey.
And it feels to me, Roger, just being out at Oracle Park, like, man, Buster is so devastated over what's happened. I think this is very difficult for him to see how excited he was about building this roster that he thought could meaningfully compete this year, and instead has done the exact opposite, has forced him to say, look, we have to be open to anything on Father's Day. I mean, that's how early the Giants had to consider big time trades, and they have not shot down the idea that they would, be closed off to Rafael Devers offers or Matt Chapman offers or Willie Adames offers, and they can't shoot that down. But that is not what he envisioned stepping into this job. I think he felt the Giants were a few meaningful pieces away. They needed the boldness to go spend money that didn't exist during Farhan's cautious era as the general manager, and it has backfired in spectacular fashion, and he doesn't know what to do. That's what it seems to me. And Buster had an answer for everything during his playing career. He always had some sort of tweak or solution. I mean, he played on half a hip for some seasons and hit 300, but he doesn't have that one magic move he can pull out right now.
Yeah, who's the Chicago journalist who said
Jesse Rogers.
Looks like his dog died.
he gave that quote to me on KMBR.
I mean, you know Buster. You covered Buster. You have called Buster one of the smartest men on
Absolutely.
the K-Raj podcast. What did you make of that press conference yesterday?
I think the organization as a whole set him up to fail. And I don't think...
A theme that we're making many times today, right?
I also don't think that the PR folks anticipated as many questions about the Pride Night controversy as they got. I think they went into that discussion with reporters thinking that Buster would talk mostly about Rafael Devers, mostly about Tony Vitello, and would probably have to put up with a few questions about the trade deadline. And, maybe there would be a question or two about the Pride Night controversy, but because the Giants had issued their statement, he might not get asked about anything like that. And everyone in the media, we all have page views, we all have metrics, we all hear from our audience more directly through email and social media than ever before. We know how deeply the community of Giants fans feels about everything that transpired with the three pitchers who wrote Bible verses on their hat. And we knew what questions would be asked. And so I think that they needed another executive to flank him. I think it probably needed to be Larry Baer. If you're the CEO, that's your job. Yeah. And someone there needed to speak personally. They didn't need to say, I'm going to throw Landon Roop and JT Brubaker under the bus. What they did was completely wrong. They didn't need to do that. What they did need to do, whether it be Larry or Buster, is say, this is an organization with a 3-decade track record of supporting and working with the LGBTQ community in San Francisco and the Bay Area. We pride ourselves as the organization that has stepped up. We were first until there's a cure day. We were first to put pride colors on our jerseys. You are welcome here. And instead, no one has said the words, you are welcome here, since the pitchers put those caps on. And that is just confounding. Buster could have spoken personally. He didn't. That's his right as the president of baseball operations. But someone at the highest ranking levels of the organization needed to do that. It probably needed to be Larry. Greg Johnson could have stepped up. But why have Pride Night if you don't have an executive who's committed to that?
That is a great question. My non-baseball day job back when I had a day job before I retired was as a communications professional. I advised senior executives on how to do press conference. If you're telling me that they did not expect those questions is stupefying to me. I cannot imagine how a communication official could go into that press conference and not know that was going to be the top topic. All you got to do is look at, social media for 2 seconds. It's that is astounding. But your other point is the most important one. All you have to do is show empathy.
Yes.
You don't have to make grand statements. You don't have to fix things, but just show people you care somehow. Astoundingly, it was Tony Vitello, I think, who made at least the best overture in that direction in his comments. He at least talked about being inclusive and welcoming to all parts of the fan base. But somebody above his pay grade needed to do that. And you're right. Larry's the guy. Larry has a very long connection to this team, this community, this city. I don't know why he wasn't there. Yeah.
And it made me think, Roger, a little bit about, Mike Krukow has probably been the most vocal person from the Giants organization on this issue. And he's been the only person really willing to step up and say, you know what, this hurt me a little bit. And I recognize that the gay community is such an important part of our stands at Oracle Park, of the people who show up and support this team. And it made me think about, Rennell's not with the organization anymore. And people can say what they want about, whether or not she spoke up too much. I don't think she did. But that's another person at a high-ranking level of the organization who would put pressure on the current folks in their respective positions. And the Giants aren't going to have Mike Krukow around for 100 more years. They're fortunate that he's stepping up and representing the organization on this level, because without Krukow's voice, a few years from now, the Giants could be without any voice speaking candidly on these matters. And that's what kind of scares me a little bit is, will anyone step up and provide an alternative viewpoint? We've seen it's JT Brubaker and Landon Roop and Ryan Walker, they're entitled to do what they want. They've stepped up for a community that they feel that they're a part of. You've got to have people who feel comfortable saying the opposite. You've got to have people feeling like they can speak openly without fear of retribution. And I'm not so sure that culture exists with the San Francisco Giants at this moment.
First, God bless Mike Krukow.
Yes.
Who has always made, you talk about speaking from the heart. He has always made his love of the San Francisco Giants obvious, palpable. He loves this organization. He loves this fan base, and he is willing to speak his mind. And it was good to hear him speak up. But I think what you're talking about is really what's kind of defining the organization off the field is just a level of tone deafness.
Yeah.
And what's defining it on the field is a level of sloppiness.
Yeah.
And those two things are kind of becoming a toxic mix.
They really are. I just think about on the field, there's no accountability at any level of this. Like Rafael Devers openly defies Tony Vitello to the point where you've got a lot of ex-players taking to social media, and ex-players aren't huge on criticizing major league players. A lot of the shows that they do, a lot of the media that they do, Roger, it's to build up the game. It's to build up the current players. I think there's actually a pretty good culture in baseball of that. But you've got a lot of ex-players coming out and saying what he did was wrong. And you've got a Giants organization that, Tony says, I wasn't disrespected. You've got Buster saying, I haven't talked to him yet. Yeah. Where's the accountability here? Like, no one's saying, Rafael Devers can't play on Tuesday night at Oracle Park. And if they made that decision, okay. But it doesn't appear as though anyone wants to have a hard conversation with anyone about the reality that a player is not willing to sub himself out in the ninth inning of a game where you're 15 games under 500. Yeah. It's not like the Giants are streaking toward the playoffs and worried about having Rafael Devers bat in the lineup for the 11th inning. This is a team that, if the manager says do something, I don't care how inexperienced this manager is, you kind of have to do it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for Tony Vitello. He was thrown into the deep end. He wasn't given the best playing hand.
No.
but it sure does feel from the outside in as if he has expended a lot of his energy this year trying to avoid appearing, I don't know if weak's the wrong term, but not in charge, and he's not really succeeding in that.
Yeah.
And he's not really succeeding in anything else either. It's been a tough, it's been a rocky start, and this goes back to, of course, what we talked about at the beginning, the sort of doubling down of a head of baseball operations without experience, hiring an on-field manager without experience, and a lack of experience is part of what's going on here.
Yeah.
But I mean, the accountability thing, it's almost the definition of an insanity at this point. They play bad baseball every day, and they roll out the same 9 players every day. The relief pitchers can't throw strikes, and they're not churning through the bullpen. The bullpen's the easiest place to just throw numbers at, claim guys off the waiver wire, go find someone who's going to throw strikes. They just keep running the same guys out there.
I don't know if I made this point with you on K-Raj, and this is probably the most likely forum I made it, but in February when the non-roster invitee list came out, in fact, you can't get away with talking about the non-roster invitees on KMBR or any other, this is where we talk about them.
That's right.
I said, Roger, there are not enough non-roster invitees. The Giants had like 9 or 10. You need 20 guys coming to camp on minor league deals to say, oh my goodness, Dom Leon's good this year. He hasn't been good in 3 years, but you know what? He figured out, like Caleb Killian was the perfect non-roster invitee. Guy has thrown 94, 95 his whole career. He shows up in camp, and all of a sudden he can touch 98, and he's on the roster. And then they brought in Gregory Santos with the same expectation. It didn't work out for him. But you need about 15 more Gregory Santoses. You need guys who've touched the big leagues, who've been hanging out at AAA, find every Yoel Peguero in every farm system and say, you're a Sacramento River Cat through April and May.
I saw Gregory Santos pitch just 2 days ago here in Arizona.
That's not where I want to see him pitching these days, Roger.
That is a massive, massive dude. I forgot how big he was. But yeah, I mean, I said the same thing about the NRI list, but another thing was at one point in April or May, they went like 2 weeks with 1 or 2 open spots on the 40-man. That's where those waiver claims, just grab an arm, see what he has. Because there are Caleb Killians out there. I'll say something else about Caleb Killian, who I loved him as a prospect. I've always been a big fan of his. I would trade him right now.
Yeah.
He is a guy who's throwing 98 after like 4 or 5 years of various health issues. He is the best he's ever been. This is found money. And I know there are teams out there asking about him because I've heard from some of them. And I know that they have told me the Giants are not inclined to do that. But I say, take this guy, turn him into pennies from heaven, and go find next year's Caleb Killian next year by having, as you say, a very long NRI list.
Yeah, and I would do the exact same thing with Keaton Wynn. I don't know that you can do it with both of them, but find the best deal for one of them because, again, 98, 99, having success this year, and a long track record of health issues. You have to take advantage when you have that opportunity. Bullpens turn over year over year more than any other spot on a Major League Baseball diamond, any other spot on a 40-man roster. You have to have confidence that you can recreate an 8-man bullpen from 24 pitchers signed in the offseason.
So let's end this on this. So a month from now, just about, is the trade deadline. What do you want to see the Giants accomplish by the time we get to August?
I would like to see them add 2 legitimate starting pitching prospects and at least 4 to 5 high upside arms. And I don't care how you accomplish that. I don't care if it's, trading some of the big 3, if it's a surprise deal involving someone like an Elliot Ramos who's got team control. I think the emphasis for this organization must be developing pitching talent that brings premium velocity and the ability to miss bats to the major league level. That has got to be the priority. And however you accomplish that, Roger, surprise me. What's your objective here?
No, absolutely. I've been asked this question in some of my mailbags. What would you like to see the Giants use whatever trade chips they have for? And it's got to be pitching, and velocity. There just is not enough here. And I'll circle back around to a comment you made a long time ago, which is And something that Grant Brisbee wrote a really good article about in The Athletic today, that a lot of what this organization seems to want to do is sort of drag it back to the vibes of 2010, 2012, 2014. They're also trying to reestablish that style of baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball has moved on since then. It is in a very, very different place from 2010. And it is about power. It's
Yep.
about power in the batter's box and power on the mound. And I think they need to get with the program and not try and, drag the game backwards, because the game's not going to go backwards.
All right, he is Roger Munter. Again, does a great job with the There Are Giants Substack. If you want more Roger, go to his website, go get his prospect breakdowns, updates on the state of the farm system. He does the best mailbag, in my opinion, of anyone covering the San Francisco Giants organization. Such detailed answers to such tremendous questions from readers, really insightful audience as well that Roger's got. So always love supporting Roger and always appreciate him sharing his time with us right here on Giants Warm Up. And that was the K-Raj podcast that, again, we discussed earlier this week, all of those topics. So thanks to Roger for dropping by on that. Up next, Connor Grossman will join me. You hear him regularly here on the KNBR airwaves as a guest on Giants Warm Up. He has a great Substack as well, Giants Postcards. You can get detailed updates on the state of the San Francisco Giants through a fan's perspective, basically after every single game in your email inbox. I love waking up and reading Giants Postcards, and Connor will be with us on the other side. You're listening to KNBR, the sports leader.
Our KNBR Giants warm-up keeps rolling on the Sports Leader.
We are back here on Giants Warm-Up. Kerry, Crowley rolling with you until first pitch here this evening, 6:05 p.m. Pacific time, coming your way from Oracle Park. Logan Webb will throw it. It's time to welcome in our next guest, Connor Grossman. He does a great job writing about the San Francisco Giants through the lens of a fan, has tremendous Substack, Giants Postcards. We also tape the Giants Postcards podcast on a weekly basis. You can get it Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And this week, unsurprisingly, Connor and I had a detailed discussion about the state of the organization, and in particular, Buster Posey, the president of baseball operations, the three-time World Series champion, and the person who, for the first time in what feels like his career as both a player, owner, executive, what have you, seemed unprepared for a moment. And whether that's Buster's fault, whether that's someone higher up in the organization's fault, I think that's up for interpretation, but it was at least worth discussing in great detail. So, Connor, on the subject of Buster Posey, I will give you the floor and just start things off with the moment that we saw Tuesday of this week at Oracle Park.
It also caused me to take a step back and think about big picture Buster since he came into our lives 16 years ago, which was like, this guy has always been so measured and, again, to use your word, prepared and just ready to meet the moment, whatever that moment is, from his first call up to the World Series to, his retirement press conference to his hiring press conference for this job. Like a man who always meets the moment, calm, cool, collected. I've never seen him so out of sorts. And I bet he's probably hasn't seen himself this out of sorts in a long time. And yeah, I don't know who to blame. I don't know who to point the finger to. I just think as an organization, I can't believe they put him in that kind of position to fail. And with the Devers thing specifically, he put himself in a position to fail by not having talked to him. And that, again, was shocking.
The other thing about this, and I'm, coming up with this in the moment, is if Buster wasn't this organizational hero who had done so much for the franchise on the field and became part of ownership and then stepped into the front office at a critical point for this franchise, would he have more people around him trying to prepare him?
Huh. That's really interesting. And you're saying in a hypothetical world, whether you had someone like Farhan or otherwise someone who's considered an outsider, like it's all hands on deck in theory to make sure this person is in a position, maybe not to succeed, but at least not to fail.
Yeah, exactly. And you've always got people who are like, gunning for bigger roles and bigger opportunities, and they want to impress the boss and have them in a particular, spot to succeed. And I just don't know, like, if people feel as comfortable because Buster was a former player, like, is he as approachable because of his status?
Yeah.
I can't say for certain that he is. I know that there are some people who are very comfortable with him. I think Matt Chisholm, the guy that you mentioned, the PR man who was flanking him during the press conference, he's got a relationship with Buster that dates back 15 years. Like those two know each other. I don't think Chisholm has a problem telling him things, but I do wonder about, folks in baseball ops, new coaches, players who might understand the cachet that he has in San Francisco.
Like, do you want to go to the future Hall of Fame catcher and tell him right from wrong? Like, hey, I don't know if you know this about baseball, but it's like, yeah, it was easy to dunk on, a so-called nerd like Farhan because he hadn't laced him up. And not only that, he hadn't certainly had a Hall of Fame career like Buster had. So I'm sure there's a level of intimidation that might be hard to really grasp from the outside looking in. But really just all around astounding. I can't believe they didn't make Larry Baer or an official who can speak on behalf of diversity or the organization views, or Greg Johnson, even just somebody who's not in charge of the major league roster who can speak organizationally about what happened on Pride Night and how the organization feels and the steps it's taking. Like, I don't necessarily think all of that should be a Buster job. There are nuances in what happened, specifically the alleged miscommunication from the organization to the players about whether or not they have to participate or what that looks like, and whether or not the players actually relayed their plans to Tony V, and if they're disrespecting. There's some nuances that you could pin on Buster or the clubhouse leadership, but at large, this is an organizational issue, and that's where I think the biggest failure in all of this mess is putting Buster out there in the first place to speak on things that he knew he wasn't going to speak about, and then you make him look bad, you make the organization look bad, and just, again, that's how you end up in a place where I'm left feeling embarrassed to be associated with the Giants in any way at all, because it's just a capital F fiasco. Otherwise, in the conversation with Buster, we learned he's open to trades, believe it or not. He still believes in the core, believe it or not. Spoke, my favorite quote came at the very end. He spoke generally but ominously about how when things generally don't go well for a team, conversations will be had, alluding to conversations will be had about who goes and stays. That felt like a little bit of a mic drop, and I would guess Buster didn't intend it to be that way, but in the context of the whole season, it was hard not to look into those words. Would you agree?
Yeah, and what was interesting to me is I think he was asked that with regard to his own status as the president of baseball operations, and he said, "Look, I love that baseball's a meritocracy. If you're here and doing well, you'll stay. If you're here and not doing well, you'll go." And I think for the first time, there was the realization publicly from Buster, like, hey, people might be having conversations behind my back about whether or not I'm fit for this role. And I think, he still adamantly wants to prove that he can fill this 3-year contract and get through it and position the Giants for more success than they were positioned for when Farhan Zaidi left. But, it's late June in his second year, and they are not positioned for more success.
I just don't think you can rule out a Posey departure. And that's what it would be. It would be a Buster Posey departure, not a firing, not an ask to step aside. It will be very clearly and publicly positioned as Buster stepping aside.
Yeah, it gets weird with the ownership stuff. And I know that no one wants to touch that, but it does get weird. Like,
right.
Jed York said you can't fire yourself. Buster might fire himself one day.
I think he might. Like, I really think Buster stepping aside after this year, this might sound like a hot take or kind of crazy. I think it's more likely Buster steps aside after this year than Tony V does. I mean, just my 2 cents. I just remain so adamant that this isn't a long-term gig for Buster, whether that's by lack of performance or lack of wanting to deal with the day-to-day demands of this job. I'm sure he's wishing these past couple weeks he wasn't sitting in the big chair at the end of the boardroom table. And it's hard not to feel more strongly and convicted about that take that he's not going to be here for the long haul. But this is the mess the Giants signed up for when they made their golden boy, their future Hall of Famer, the mascot of 3 championships, their head of baseball operations. You didn't know when the mess was going to come, but you had to know it was going to come at some point. And this might actually be messier than anyone inside the organization could have thought possible, given all the different tentacles that you're reaching out here with.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
The Giants are an octopus. So there's also the
they could use 8 arms right now. I'll tell you that.
They sure could. Pitchers, I assume. Starting pitchers, specifically. Speaking of starting pitchers, Rafael Devers. There's that component to this whole saga. And so I would assume, Kerry, did the reporters, did you guys just migrate from the dugout into the clubhouse? Maybe there was a gap between those availabilities?
It was about an 8-minute gap between Buster speaking and Devers speaking. So,
were you guys made aware before going into the clubhouse that Devers would be around to speak, or was that?
No.
How did that go down?
I actually did not migrate into the clubhouse with the rest of the reporters because I will have you note the San Francisco Standard was the first outlet to publish a story from Buster Posey's media availability on Tuesday afternoon at Oracle Park.
I did notice that. Believe it or not, I'm not even BSing you. I noticed that and thought to myself, like, did John pre-write this? Like, it's kind of astounding. Like, maybe he guessed what subjects would come up and could plug in quotes, but well done. Done.
There was a live transcription service on site that day, and
like a stenographer for Buster.
That was me.
Very good, very good.
So, yeah. When I had the 75th best spot, I decided to pull out the computer and just write down everything that Buster said so that John could have his quotes ready for a story, and he produced.
What a selfless editor you are.
Yeah.
Just bravo. We tip our caps to you,
Yeah.
Kerry Crowley.
Couple hours out of the office on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm sacrificing.
Okay. However it went down, Devers is speaking to reporters for the first time in a long time, and I'm sure most of you listeners right now are aware that he tried turning away Jonah Cox as a pinch runner in the 9th inning of the series finale against the Marlins. It was a weird moment. It was kind of aggressive. It was definitely embarrassing, and it was a bad look for everyone involved. After that, I wrote in my newsletter, GiantsPostcards.com, that we've seen this kind of thing before. Specifically, the incident with Mike Mussina came to mind, where Mussina was an out away from a complete game shutout, I believe, and Joe Torre, his manager, came 1 foot out of the dugout, and Mussina yells at him like, "Stay there, you stay there." And that moment is now looked back on as just a beautiful example of competition and heat of the moment reaction between two Hall of Famers on a Yankees team that went on to win 97 games. Well, that moment ain't this moment.
Yeah.
This is an underperforming star on an underperforming team who's openly disrespecting a manager who's under a microscope like no other manager has been before. And it's just an awful look when you consider all that context. And Devers, as has been the case for pretty much the entire season, would not talk to reporters after it happened. And so here he is. Giants are back at Oracle Park. He's finally going to speak about it. He says he apologized to Tony V on the plane. He thought there was a misunderstanding about a hamstring that had been bothering him, and he thought maybe the pinch runner was coming out because Tony thought Devers' hamstring was still bothering him. He doesn't think he disrespected him at all. He doesn't think he needs to apologize to anyone other than the manager. And then at the very end, he went on a little mini rant about how the media just blew up the story. And I guess you and I, Kerry, are part of that. That was a lot to unpack. I think what I noticed watching his availability, Devers's, is just the look on his face, because he had Erwin Higueros as the Spanish language interpreter translating there with him. But Devers clearly understands enough English, or could register by the tone of the question or select words of the questions. Like, he knew what Erwin was about to ask him in Spanish, because just the incredulous look on his face as Devers is being asked about, like, well, do you think you need to apologize to anyone else? Like, clearly thought of this moment much differently than everyone else did. And again, is just another awful look. I mean, I also felt for Erwin in that moment, who wears so many hats for the Giants, but Rafi's rant against the media at the end of his availability was so long, and I'm just looking at Erwin like doing his best to listen and regurgitate, but try to come up with a comprehensive or coherent way to share what Devers is saying. It was just, I don't envy Erwin, and I just was left shaking my head after yet another public availability by someone on the Giants.
Yeah. Anyone with the Giants want to say something that's reflects positively on the organization this week?
Right. Anything at all. How about just, I like baseball. End of press conference. How about that? That would be better. That would set the bar higher than where it currently is.
Now, I think you make a good point on the tremendously difficult nature of Erwin Higueros' job, and the ability to keep your calm and poise as the translator in that moment when you kind of know that the questions are going to be tense. The answers are even more tense from Devers, who wants nothing to do with the conversation. Looks like he's being held against his will to have this discussion. And really just a lack of contrition from Devers there. I think someone with the team should have advised him on what to say, whether or not he meant it.
I'm sensing a trend
not.
or a theme here.
Whether or not he meant it or not, say, love Tony, respect Tony, miscommunication on my end, won't happen again. I play hard. I want to stay in all 9 innings. These things happen when you want to win. These talking points just aren't that difficult.
Right. I mean, this is something that has long just perplexed me and amused me depending on the context. But like, I ask myself, like, how hard is it, one, to lie if you feel like that's what you have to do to say the quote unquote right thing that is short and sweet to the point, kind of like what you reiterated there. But how hard is it to be just contrite, to bite your tongue, say the few words that will go down in print just fine, and the world will keep turning, and the conversations don't need to continue like ours is right now? Like you said, how hard is it to say, I shouldn't have done that. I apologize to the organization. I apologize to Tony. Won't happen again. Literally, if you said that, there's not many more follow-ups to go from there. There's just not.
But instead, he blamed the media. And what are we doing?
Right.
We're
Exactly.
talking
Right.
about him.
And it's just like, he's gone on the record, Devers has, saying he doesn't want to be a leader, just kind of wants to show up and do his job. But man, I don't care if you're a rookie, if you're a Hall of Famer, you can't do what he did on the field. You high-five the pinch runner that's in to take your place, and you get the hell off the field. And if you want to yell and scream in the tunnel or the clubhouse, like, go ahead, man. But don't embarrass yourself, your team, your manager. It was just a selfish moment.
Yeah.
Just another complete calamity. That's all this season has been. It's just one mini disaster after another. And to have several of them snowball into a giant calamity, disaster, whatever you want to call it, over the last 2 weeks, to have that just compound the losing happening on the field, it's unbelievable. It's true.
Yeah.
Astounding is the word I used earlier in our discussion. I cannot believe it. It is hard to comprehend.
Yeah. I was talking with a longtime sports journalist who was trying to put this in perspective. And he was like, these type of things find their way to bad teams.
Yeah.
Like these sagas pop up every 10 to 15 days for teams that can't stay out of their own way on the field. It's all connected. And for anyone who thinks that it's not, like, there are just so many teams where things have snowballed and you get these things that happen. Think back to 2017 when the Giants got off to the god-awful start.
Yeah.
Like they didn't get off to a god-awful start because Madison Bumgarner crashed his dirt bike. They got off to a god-awful start and then Madison Bumgarner crashed his dirt bike. And then, oh, by the way, by the end of May, the closer who they signed for $64 million had gray matter in his elbow. Like, that's not an injury I've ever heard of, and I haven't heard of it since then. But I remember
is that Alzheimer's of the elbow?
I was talking to Mark Melanson, and just matter of factly, he's like, yeah, the surgeon went in and they said that it's gray. Like they've just never seen anything like this. And I'm thinking, this dude is 2 months in to his contract, and unbelievably so, he turned out to be a good pitcher after the Giants traded him.
It's true,
which is amazing. But that was all before May that season, and like the Giants did other things, like final day of the regular season. Not that it mattered that they won on a walk-off from Pablo Sandoval that cost them the #1 pick, but like they won the only game they didn't need to win that year. You lose that game, you get the #1 pick in the draft. And Casey Mize wasn't going to change the franchise. But Pablo Sandoval, the guy who they brought back, and by the way, quotes that season from the clubhouse to Alex Pavlovich, were like, don't bring this guy back. And what happens? What happens? They bring him back. And
back.
It was great. I loved watching Pablo. But I went through 2017 like, is this real? Like every 5 days, something horrific is happening. And that's the same thing about this season.
I can't think of a good baseball analogy to what you're describing, but football definitely comes to mind, specifically the New York Jets. You get the storyline about Woody Johnson, the owner of the team, his teenage sons. One of them's named Brick. Like, all of a sudden, Brick's a big Madden player, and a story comes out that apparently he's influencing like who the team is drafting because of their Madden rating or his preferences playing video games. Like, just stuff that you could not even write if you were trying to write a TV show about your horrible, no good, very bad sports team. Like, impossible things. Like, the Jets are in a dysfunctional organization that just invites that kind of chaos. There's an expression in life about creating your own good luck.
Yeah.
Some teams go out of their way to create their own bad luck. And it's hard to look at what's happened to the Giants and even call it luck, because a lot of this feels like it could have been avoided with better communication and coordination and just basic stuff that any business, sports team or otherwise, tries to pull off. And the leadership has really just been lacking.
To that point, Tim Kawakami wrote a column recently about Buster Posey, and one of his points was, you don't have this situation on Pride Night and the controversy if you have players who you don't have to tell what to do. Like, if you have players who you trust are just going to do what's best for the team in any given moment, you don't have things like this happen. And it's on Buster to assemble a roster that has players who are all bought in. Like, you don't have the Devers situation if you just get guys who are high character and are doing what they are supposed to be doing.
Is the TK column, is that behind a paywall?
I believe so. Good
Do you mind doing a dictation? I'm just looking for ways to grow our audience, and I'm wondering if SF Standard free readers out there might be interested in listening if they know they will get the sports editor to read aloud. Maybe one column
$1 a month subscription going on right now, Connor.
And you know what? An absolutely free 99 subscription to Giants Postcards will get you a mini dictation of one SF Standard story per week. Terms and conditions apply.
That's good.
We move forward. Tony V, we're just moving along this this misspoken three-headed
someone else
monster.
Spoke this week,
right? This all happened in one day, folks. It's unbelievable. Tony V does his regular availability all in the same day. He said the pitchers who protested on Pride Night did not give him a heads up about their plans and that he didn't feel that was disrespectful to him. He followed that up by saying, quote, "I think that's far from the issue. If anything, I could go for revisiting some of the games we played in the early third of the year where we showed a little more attitude, a little more edge, a little more welcoming challenge." I was like, what? Like, weren't we just talking about Pride Night a second ago? He is an odd duck, man. And then he said he wasn't bothered by the Devers incident. He said right after it happened that he likes having guys who need the jersey ripped off them to get off the field. And then the next day in this availability, he said, as a person, the way Devers, treats my family, my dad, I'll go to battle with him off the field too. If he came over to my condo and said, I need your help, you can't ask what it's about. We're going to do some damage. All I'd say is, whose car are we going to take? Any way you slice it, I don't think any of it's a good reflection on Tony V's leadership. I appreciated Bags put it in a similar way, which is either Tony's lying about not feeling disrespected or he's totally naive to what that would look like and how a big league clubhouse is supposed to be governed, because I don't buy it. Like, give me a polygraph of him actually saying, like, no, I didn't care that the pitchers didn't tell me what was going to set off a giant fiasco for the organization. No, I didn't care about Devers rejecting the pinch runner I sent out for obvious reasons to start the ninth inning of a one-run game. I mean, how is this happening? How is this happening that the daily spokesman for the organization can hardly put three coherent sentences in a row that apply to the question that you asked him?
Tony Vitello strikes me as the type of manager who would be incredible to have for a fan base if your team was winning 95 games. Like, I think you would have so much fun as a fan base.
If Tony V could have done Gabe Kapler's media availabilities in 2021, there might be statues built of both of them.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But he's also the type of manager on the flip side where if you're going to lose 100, it's painful. Mm-hmm. And like the exact opposite of this is Jim Harbaugh in football, to where if he was 2-14 or 14-2, I think the press conference is pretty much the same. He's going to be tense. It's going to be mildly uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And you're just going to get the same laser focus from that man. Whereas, with Tony, kind of a loose cannon, shooting from the hip, saying things that don't always make sense. Like, if you do that after a 10-3 win and you won 11 of 13, like, that's awesome. Fans are going to play that clip up on social media and you're going to be a viral hero. Mm-hmm. He just has the wrong team. He has the wrong team for his personality type. And I don't know that the Giants will be able to fix that in his tenure. All right, we are going to cut things off right there, take a quick break, and come back with a little bit more from Connor. He and I do our favorite segment every week, the best and worst thing you saw in Giants baseball. We will cover that on the other side right here on Giants Warm Up, rolling with you until the pregame at 5:05. First pitch at 6:05 from Oracle Park right here on KBR, the sports leader.
Welcome back to our KNBR Giants warm-up on the Sports Leader.
All right, we are back here on Giants Warm-Up. Kerry, Crowley rolling with you until 5:05. Pregame starts then. 6:05 first pitch from Oracle Park this evening. Logan Webb will throw it. He's opposed by Bryce Elder. Mentioned before the break that we were going to do our best and worst thing of the week that we saw in Giants baseball with Connor Grossman. But instead, we're going to get back to the lineups and scores from around Major League Baseball. Realize that we've been doing interviews for about an hour now. We're going to cut things off there. Appreciate Connor and Roger, and we're going to get right to scores from around the major leagues. Bottom of the 8th inning at Citi Field in Queens, where the Mets have overtaken the Phillies. They lead 6-2 right now over Philadelphia. The Mets, of course, fired manager Carlos Mendoza, replacing him with interim Andy Green, if that name sounds familiar, former manager of the San Diego Padres. A quick Andy Green story that was relatively funny to me way back in like 2018 or 2019. The Giants and Padres weren't very good. Chris Stratton had a great game for the San Francisco Giants. I think he went like 7 innings of one hit ball down in San Diego at Petco Park. And, you get to the clubhouse. He asked Bruce Bochy what he saw from Stratton. He was excited about how he was filling up the strike zone. Stratton was talking about using the curveball a lot more. And I went up to go write my game story for the San Jose Mercury News at the time. And the Padres reporters came back from talking to Andy Green, who had kind of lit into his team and the lineup back then. And he essentially said post-game, he goes, Stratton wasn't very good. We just didn't hit the ball. And I thought it was interesting. Usually, you get the tip your cap. Oh, their opposing starter did well. And in that case, Andy Green let the frustration reach a boiling point. And he said, you know what, Stratton, he's 7 innings of one hit ball, but this was on us. He didn't do anything special that night. So that is my Andy Green story. Kai Correa, a candidate, in my opinion, to replace Carlos Mendoza. At least I thought he was. He's the bench coach in New York, but they're going with Andy Green, who has managerial experience, and they're up 6-2 right now after 8 innings. End of the 6th inning right now at the Trop in Tampa, where the Rays hold a 4-1 lead over the Arizona Diamondbacks. D-backs dealing with a ton of injuries this season. Their rotation has been depleted. Their lineup has had guys in and out, and they're 41-40. So really no excuses for the Giants to be 15 under 500 with all of the injuries they haven't dealt with. I mean, Elliot Ramos is out. He's on the IL, but there's not a lot clicking for this San Francisco team at the moment. Top of the 3rd inning in Baltimore, battle of the DMV. The Nationals lead the Orioles 1-1 right now. Or excuse me, they don't lead the Orioles 1-1. It is 1-1 right now at Camden Yards. The Orioles 5 games under 500. The Nationals, led by San Francisco's own Paul Taboni, president of baseball operations, are 41-42 on the season. Bottom of the 3rd inning in Cleveland, where the Guardians and the Mariners are still scoreless. Logan Gilbert on the hill for Seattle. 2 outs, runner on second base, and Stephen Kwan, the Bay Area's own, at the plate against Gilbert, who's gone through 2 2/3 innings with 2 strikeouts thus far. Top of the 4th inning in Milwaukee, where Kyle Harrison is again pitching well for the Brewers. Brewers 50-29 right now, facing off against the Chicago Cubs, 44-38. David Peterson getting the ball today for the Chicago Cubs. ERA of above 6 when he was traded earlier this week by the New York Mets to the Cubs. I think the Cubs taking a long look at Peterson, seeing if they can get him in their program, get a pitching coach to fix him up. There's still some potential in that arm, and my guess is if it doesn't work out within the next month, the Cubs will just continue shopping at the trade deadline for another left-hander in that rotation, and maybe Robbie Ray is a fit from the San Francisco Giants if the Giants are not trading him sooner than the end of July. Harrison right now, though, has just given up a 2-run home run in that ball game. Not quite sure who hit it, but he has now given up a 2-run home run, so the Cubs lead 2-1 over the Milwaukee Brewers in Milwaukee. Top of the 3rd inning in Minnesota, Target Field, where the Rockies lead the Twins right now 2-1 in that ball game. You've got the middle of the 3rd inning now as they've just gotten out of that frame. Byron Buxton due up for Minnesota. And top of the third inning in St. Louis. Good matchup between the Cardinals and the Marlins. Two teams outperforming expectations so far this season. Cardinals 5 games over 500. And the Marlins, after sweeping the San Francisco Giants last weekend in Miami, one of the worst series I think the Giants have played this season. The Marlins picked up some momentum. They are 4 over 500, led, of course, by President of Baseball Operations Peter Bendix. Gabe Kapler in that organization right now as an assistant to the general manager. Payante on the hill for the Cardinals in that ball game, who trail 1-0. He's through 2 2/3 innings, allowed 4 hits, 3 strikeouts, trying to get through that third inning. A runner on third with 2 outs in the frame. A couple finals to tell you about. The Red Sox 4-1 winners over the New York Yankees. Garrett Cole 2-3 now with a 4.06 earned run average as he takes the loss in that one, coming back from Tommy John surgery, of course. And then Aroldis Chapman, save number 16 for the Boston Red Sox, who, of course, fired Alex Cora early on this season. A lot of people speculating that Cora could be a candidate after this year to go to New York and manage the Mets. The Houston Astros defeated the Detroit Tigers today. A.J. Hinch losing to his old team 8-6 in that ballgame. Will Vest takes the loss for Detroit. Josh Hader saved number 7 since his return from the injured list for the Houston Astros, who are 41-44, not quite in the American League playoff picture at the moment. Texas Rangers defeated the Toronto Blue Jays 7-4 earlier today. Gray gets the win in that ballgame for Texas. Dylan Cease takes loss number 4. Cease, remember, he signed that big 7-year, $210 million contract to go join the team that won the AL pennant last year and had such high hopes entering this season. Cease 4-4, the ERA 3.02. That's good enough, but the record not where Toronto expected it to be, and not for Cease or for the team, as they're 5 games under 500. They've not gotten it going at the Rogers Center, 22-23 after today's loss to the visiting Texas Rangers. And the White Sox win in walk-off fashion today. They take it 2-1 over the Kansas City Royals. The White Sox won yesterday over the Kansas City Royals 22-1. Yes, 22-1 today. A little more even of a ball game, 2-1. Chicago wins it in the bottom of the 9th inning. Taylor the win, Lynch the loss in that one. And then one other final to tell you about. The Cincinnati Reds take down the Pittsburgh Pirates in a high-scoring affair, 9-7. Caleb Ferguson the win out of the bullpen for the Reds. And Chase Petty save number 1 for Cincinnati, which improves to 39-42. The Pirates fall a game under 500 after they got off to that great start this season. They have now sunk back to where most people expect the Pirates to be, 41-42. Outside of the San Francisco Giants later on this evening, hosting the Atlanta Braves, the Padres and the Dodgers. They'll do battle down at Petco Park. Kyle Hart gets the start for San Diego. An opener for Randy Vasquez as they'll go lefty to the righty in that ballgame. Yoshinobu Yamamoto takes the rock for the Dodgers. He's 7-5 with a 2.65 earned run average. And the Angels playing host to the A's today. Perkins and Detmers in that ball game. Detmers 3-5 for the Angels, 3.93 earned run average. A lot of speculation over whether or not he will be traded at this year's deadline. But the Angels made a significant move. Perry Minasian, he's out as general manager. Former GM of the St. Louis Cardinals, John Mozeliak, taking over in an interim capacity. He gave a press conference earlier today, said that, he hasn't discussed anything with Angels owner Artie Moreno, which is interesting that you would take over as the interim executive leading a baseball operations department, and not have any discussions with the team owner. But, for anyone wondering if things can get worse for the San Francisco Giants, as Tom Tolbert used to say, at least you're not the Angels. So that is our look around Major League Baseball. The Giants and the Braves coming your way at 6:05 p.m. Pacific time. We'll give you the lineup one more time for Tony Vitello's squad. Luis Urias leading things off and playing second base for the Giants, 321 average and 807 OPS. Casey Schmidt, the left fielder for this ball club, 16 home runs. That's a team high. He hit second today. Jung-Hoo Lee out in right field, the all-star candidate, will bat third, a 327 average. That leads the club at an 831 OPS. Also tops for the everyday player since the beginning of the season. Rafael Devers, the cleanup man, 12 homers, 39 runs driven in, 236 average and a 730 OPS. Not great for the Giants. Willy Adames hits fifth, 14 homers. That's second in the lineup today. He will hit fifth. He's the shortstop. Bryce Eldridge, the DH, he hit sixth. A little low in the lineup for my liking. I'd like to see Eldridge move up, but he's cooled off over the last week. Matt Chapman will bat seventh and play third base. He's got 7 homers and 42 driven in. Drew Gilbert out in center field today, hits eighth. And Drew Cavanaugh, the rookie who had his first Major League hit in last night's ball game, he bats ninth, and he is behind the plate for Logan Webb. More coming up next on the Giants pregame show. You're listening to KNBR, the sports leader.
Welcome to Game 2 of this 3-game series between the Giants and the Braves. The Giants have won 2 out of 3 in the season series against the Braves and look to improve on that tonight as they send their ace, Logan Webb, to the mound, sporting an MLB best 0.87 ERA in the month of June. The Braves will counter with right-hander Bryce Elder. I'm FP Santangelo alongside Joe Rizzo. It's Fiesta Gigantes baseball on the radio, and the pregame show starts right now.
Hey, everybody, it is June 27th in Giants history. Let's go back to 1999. No, not for the late, great Prince, but for the late, great Candlestick Park. It was the last year the Giants played at Candlestick Park, and they are taking on the Dodgers on 6/27/99. And Mark Gardner's pitching. What a reliable right-hander he was for the Giants. Willie Mack Award winner, just a really, really good Giant. He's taking on Chan Ho Park and the Dodgers. Okay, interesting game. Giants get on the board, bottom of the first. Jeff Kent, RBI single. The money lies in the RBIs. And now we get to our highlight. It's the bottom of the third, 2 on and 1 out, and one of the all-time popular Giants of the late 1990s and early 00s, first baseman J.T. Snow.
Kent off of first. Down the line at third is Miller. Here's the pitch to Snow. High drive. Right field. Mondesi back at the wall. Out of here. J.T. Snow, a 3-run home run, 4-0.
Yeah, Dwayne Kuiper on the call, cable car bells ringing, 4-0, and they weren't done. Giants weren't done. Ellis Burks, one of the greats, hit a solo shot to make it 5-0. Dodgers, though, made it a ball game, unfortunately. RBI knocks by Eric Karros and Adrian Beltre, and big flies from Gary Sheffield and Todd Hollingsworth, but the Giants were able to grind it out and win the game 8-7. And J.T. Snow hit a 3-run homer in this game as a big help. That all happened on June 27th, 1999. And this has been Brian Murphy with this date in Giants history.